So here we are back again at the West China Tea. We are with Sohan and Shannon. Shannon has visited us graciously to try some tea and whiskey. And I am really curious, Shannon, about the poorly educated part of your whiskey journey.
That's P-O-U-R-L-Y. Yeah. My whiskey journey, this was not a career I've had for very long. Come from an oil and gas career, but I knew I kind of wanted to learn more about whiskey. Obviously, we know I was drinking whiskey from very early on. My stepfather, I also started drinking a lot of whiskey with. And then I went on a trip to Ireland. It's probably 2013. On the Jameson tour, and at that time, they'll pick a few people out at the very beginning and hand you this mysterious scroll. You don't know what you're doing with it till the end. And at the end, they pull you up and you're kind of doing this little blind tasting. So it was just, at that moment, it just became so interesting to me. I realized I loved Irish whiskey. And when I came home, I just wanted to start learning more about whiskey. I like how it could all be so different. What other ones do I like? Do I not like? So I kind of set out on that journey just on my own. It was a few years later, I helped start a whiskey club in East Texas. And as that was growing, I was having different distillers come and talk to us. That's how I met the Licorice family. I met another distilling family, the Jackson family, who owned Tabacaro, and actually ended up going to work for them for a couple of years. When that ran its course, I knew I still wanted to be in the industry, but I didn't necessarily want to go straight back out and work for another distillery. I had found the whiskey marketing school. I had found some other Moonshine University, different educational programs. And I've always just loved learning. And I come from a long line on all the females of my family were all teachers, and I was not, although I ended up being, because I homeschooled my daughter all the way through. So I ended up being a teacher, but not in the paid professional route. So I kind of felt like that's where I fit into this industry, was just to help educate, to go around and hold fun tastings, in people's homes and just teach them about whiskey. And people loved it, so I made it a business. Wow. And I love to travel and talk about whiskey, and it does those two things.
Love it. I love the pun too, poorly educated. I often tell people I'm in the pouring industry.
You've had a similar journey with tea, haven't you? With learning about it and turning this into your business.
Certainly, education is a huge part of my job. I'll give you a smell of this now that's woken up. And this one, you can drink it, but this is the rinse. As you can give it to your bat and your dragon over here, because it's going to be a little weak. This is a 2015 aged white tea from Fuding, Fujian. That's why we have this map here, so I can do this exact thing. So where did we start? We were in Hunan, first of all. Right. Then we went to Anhui over here, and now we're going down to Fujian, Fujian over here. Little place where they invented white tea, and this is a white tea. They say 1 year tea, 3 years medicine, 7 years treasure. And the one we're drinking is, you can actually grab one. This little guy right here, it's a little cake of white tea. So you've got pu'er also comes in this shape, And so this is a more recent thing they've started doing with white tea as the desire for aged white tea specifically. Aged pu'er has been a long time. People have been into that. But aged white tea, although it was prized in Fuding, where it's from, people didn't really think about it or know about it outside of Fuding. and outside of Fujian. And then when the wider tea drinking, world got wind, oh, you can age white tea, and they like to drink it that way. Then you started seeing people pressing it into these cakes, because when you see a cake, that's a key that's good to be aged. We got these little. This is the grade that this is. You've got Silver Needle is the highest grade of white tea. White Peony is the second grade of white tea, and then Chaumet or Longevity Eyebrow, which is this grade, is the third grade of white tea. The most leaves, the least buds of the 3 grades. So kind of the coarser grade, but I like it for aging. You get a lot of those like date and honey and dried fruit notes out of it from the leaves. That is a little bit more robust than the buds. Like the tea we just drank was mostly buds, very, very light and very subtle.
Yeah.
This is going to be a lot more robust, and it's got that 9 years of age. So 1 year tea, 3 years medicine, 7 years treasure. This is 9 years old. So it's post.
This is going to pair fabulously.
I think so, yeah.
I already know.
Yeah, white tea, aged white tea is one of the best.
When you talk about aging tea, what whiskey we're aging in a barrel. What do you mean by aging tea?
This tea was aged in a cedar-lined room.
Okay.
So it's wrapped in paper, stacked up, wrapped in more paper. So you've got 10 of those little cakes stacked together in a paper sleeve. That's inside of a cardboard box, and that cardboard box is sitting in a cedar room.
Okay.
And that's how you age this particular type of tea. Other teas you age in a cave. Pu'er, a lot of time you can age in a cave. A lot of time it's just in a box where it is. There's no special environment. The most important thing is keep it away from other smells, because it'll suck up that smell. Okay. That's the most important thing. Direct sunlight, not ideal, but it's not the end of the world like it would be for whiskey. And you don't want to have too many intense temperature changes. You definitely don't want it to get wet. And that's about it.
I saw you do an unboxing where the tea was shipped here, and there was some kind of paper that was wrapped around.
It was bamboo.
It was bamboo?
Yes, bamboo leaves. So they'll just take the opened skin of the bamboo. Like at the bottom of the bamboo, you got the skin sloughing off. So they'll take that from these big bamboo, and they'll use it to wrap the 7 big cakes of tea together. So not those little ones like we had, but the big ones like this. They'll wrap it and they'll tie it together with strips of bamboo, and so it's just bamboo, bamboo wrapping, bamboo ribbon, tying it all together. It's really something to see them do it, and they'll stack 7 together. That's called a tong. That's like a unit of tea. So 1 cake is just called a being, but traditionally you don't get 1 at a time. You get 7 at a time. It's called a tong. And for the smaller ones, you can do 10 is a tong. Nice. We'll go ahead and get a taste of this, which again, this is probably going to peak in the 4th or 5th steeping, so these next steepings will be a better match with the whiskey. What's this whiskey now?
So I brought a Baker's 7 in Iowa City area when I was there, and it's been one that it's hit and miss whether or not it's available. I tie Bookers and Bakers together because I like to say Bookers and Bakers and candlestick makers.
Cute.
But
and actually, the reason there is a Baker's is because Booker named one for him. So.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so it is a Jim Beam product. We're going back to Beam. Baker Beam was the 6th generation distiller. Then came Fred
Freddie,
Booker, yeah. And then 8th is Freddie. But he worked there for 38 years. And for him, and this one is aged for 7 years. His whiskey had to be aged at least 7 years. There is a 13-year version as well, but at least 7 years. They're all cask strength or barrel strength. No, that's not true about that one.
107
That's
proof.
107 proof. But they all are single barrel. Mm-hmm. That's why it's going to be hit or miss for you, because every barrel is going to treat whiskey differently. You could have 2 aging side by side, right next to each other, all 7 years, and they're going to taste completely different.
I believe this one is in a batch. It has a serial number but I think that it's a batch. And you're able to look it up by the different, so that's 2015, 8 years, 6 months. Or am I thinking of the next one? I'm thinking of the next one.
Thinking of the
So this one has a serial number on it and another number here. Of course, barrel house where the barrel house is, and then the proof at 107. So,
And
yeah.
what does it say on the label?
And then on the label, it's going to say single barrel, correct?
So his are all single barrel. So they dump the barrel, proof it down to 107, and then however many bottles that makes, that's how many bottles it makes.
Okay. And which barrel was this? What was the identity of this barrel? Did it get a name?
So-
It'll be one of those numbers.
Yeah, serial
on
number
top.
000311547, and then it's going to be CL-K is where the barrel was located.
In the rick house.
That's going to be Claremont. So that's going to be, it was at a rick house in Claremont, Kentucky.
So specific. Honestly, you could do this with tea. They don't, but you could, because this is sitting in a room, and that
Yeah.
it has a
One
location
specific-
in that
yeah,
room,
yeah.
and it is going to affect it. And we haven't gotten there yet with tea per se. I mean, maybe some individual people have, but
Yeah.
it's not. When I'm buying this tea from her, Lee and May, we got a lot of women tea masters today.
Yeah.
But when we're buying this tea from Lee and May, she's not telling us like, oh, these ones are from this part of the room, these ones are different part of the room. But it is at play, so it's interesting.
So I liked when you were saying that this is a more robust tea, because this is at, single barrel, not cask strength, but Baker was known for liking that more robust, hotter.
Yeah.
He was a rebel himself. He kind of didn't come from a direct line from Jim Beam. He was a nephew.
Okay.
So there were a lot of people that kind of balked at the fact, didn't like him in his position. And, he was a hellraiser, a motorcycle rider, and
Cheers
Yeah.
to rebels, to breaking the rules, disrupting.
See, I wanted to
Therefore.
come back to this one. I was drinking this with Corey at my house when we first cracked this one open, and I don't know whether it was because it was first crack. And
yeah, I
that
always like to have, especially if they're known to be that
Spicy,
fuller flavor,
yeah.
more robust. I like to have them open for a while before.
Because ethanol on the nose, it just knocks your senses, and you're digging to try and find something else. There is a hint of caramel, there's a hint of sweetness, and then on the palate, it's hot again. So I'm struggling. What are you getting?
I'm still picking up those dusty peanuts I found in that
Yeah.
first one.
I
But
like
it is hotter. It is hotter, like in an ethanol way, and like I definitely get that on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Despite being lower proof than the ones that we just had.
Right. It feels like it's
lower
drinking-
than that first one. Lower
yeah.
than-
Yeah.
Well, much lower, because that first one was 120, you said? That last episode?
The 115, yeah, it was
115,
115.
It was high, yeah.
Yeah.
But it tasted much more
Much smoother,
mellow
yeah.
than this, which this is giving me a little bit of that like Yosemite Sam. I get some banana, honestly.
bit.
Like not
And
an
this
actual
is
banana.
going to be not pot still. It's going to be column still,
Right.
but it is going to be non-chill filtered.
Yeah.
So that is going to leave some of that oiliness in there.
And there's that peanut note on the finish.
Almost got like cayenne pepper.
Yeah.
Almost got like
little
dry
bit.
cayenne pepper, the fragrance, not necessarily the spice, and it is spicy. It's got a little spice. I like it. I like it. It's spunky.
And so it does have a percentage of rye in there, so it is going to have that, little bit of rye spice to it. But and his single barrels, a lot of distilleries will pull their single barrels from one specific rick house or a specific area in a rick house. He does not do that. He would pull from their rick houses all across the different counties of Kentucky. So
Interesting.
definitely going to be hit or miss. You may really love this one, and if you do, you need to look for that barrel number and then go find those.
So they're going to be radically different
Yeah.
in this series. They could be night and day different.
Yeah.
Really.
And that's the fun part, is a lot of the stories around these spirits have to do with people who have access to those warehouses and picking things from their sweet spot or their flavor profile or the things that they want to keep
It's
for
really
themselves.
good. Really good together.
Yeah, it is. This is actually that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to reapproach this whiskey with the tea and see if
Yeah.
it brought out anything different.
It's really nice. I love that pairing. It's a juicy pairing. Yeah. Honestly, like aged white tea just does not go wrong in a general sense, and definitely makes a great pairing for whiskey. I knew Corey was going to come over, so get
And now after,
monster gloves, my dude. Where's your monster hands?
after the tea, the whiskey is starting to tame.
It
does
is.
bring out some sweetness.
I want to describe it as very juicy. It's
Juicy.
kind of making my mouth water when I revisit the bourbon.
I'm getting like June Carter vibes from this whiskey. You know what I mean? She had like
Right.
she was like kind of like spunky, sassy,
Yeah, yeah.
like earthy, but I like it. It definitely doesn't feel like pretentious. It feels very like authentic, expressive, very bold. Not like it is what it is. It doesn't feel like it's trying too hard. Note wise, it's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, coming back with the tea is actually helping me dig more things out of the spirit that are more pleasant than that initial ethanol ding on the nose and that hotness. I'm now starting to get a sweetness that wasn't there before.
Almost get like a sweet, almost like goat's milk or something like that. Not so goaty, not like goat cheese where it's like super goaty.
Right.
But if you've ever had fresh goat or sheep milk, like it's sweeter. It's sweeter than cow milk, I think. Maybe it's my imagination, but I feel like
Right.
goat
Yeah.
milk is sweeter than cow milk, and it has that sweetness, and it's got that, not gamey like goat, but just like very light. It's got that thing. It's nice. I like it. And I'm getting vanilla, you know.
Yeah.
That's definitely coming out now.
Yeah.
Now, when this came out, kind of talking about wording on labels, like deciphering what's. So that's single barrel, and that doesn't really have a specific definition by TTB. Obviously, we're going to assume all these bottles came from one single barrel.
That would we'd imagine that's what that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
Now, when this brand came out in the 90s, Jim Beam created what they called their small batch lines. It was Basil Hayden's, Baker's, Booker's. And small batch also has no legal definition.
Oh, really?
We just assume that it is made from a batch of less barrels than their normal batches are going to be made of. So a Texas distillery small batch is going to be way different than Jim Beam small batch.
Right.
Right.
A Jim Beam small batch is still going to be
Maybe
tons
hundreds
of
barrels.
production,
Yeah.
but just less barrels than their white label Jim Beam
Right.
line produces.
But this being a single barrel, presumably
It's even
comes
more,
from one
yeah.
particular
Yeah.
barrel.
Yeah.
And how big?
Yeah.
Are those barrels substantially bigger?
They're 53 gallon.
Okay,
No,
so
they're
just a
standard
standard
53
barrel,
gallons.
standard
Yeah.
barrel.
And the thing is this is going to vary tremendously. I was at the liquor store where they had something like 10 single barrels lined up side by side of one product, and there were no tastings. And all you know is that this row was this barrel, this row was the next barrel, and
Fundamentally meaningless information.
exactly. So how do you determine what it is that you like? I do enjoy when stores are participating in the barrel pick, because then the spirits person is sitting there going, I went to that distillery, I was part of that barrel pick, or they sent us 6 samples of barrels and this is the one that we thought was best representative of the store. And
Yeah,
then
and that's hard in picks because you've got to think about. Now, I may really like this one personally, but this store has to sell all of these bottles, and
Right.
they know their customers. They know the flavor profile their general customers are looking for. So sometimes you're having to buy, thinking about how is this going to sell.
Yeah. And
that's
I
right.
like having people participating in that. So if it was my liquor store, I would want all of the people who are regulars at the store to come and participate in that pick, so that when it's released, those people are invested in that barrel pick.
So when was this bottled? This is 7 years old. Barreled in 2015. 8 years, 6 months.
So it's older than 7 years.
Older
So
than
his
7 years
has to be
minimum.
aged at least 7 years.
And is Baker still pulling these barrels? Is that, or this is just?
He is still alive. He's retired. He was hanging out at the distillery the day I bought that 20-year-old, so I got him to sign the bottle. But he is retired.
So someone is representing him, pulling,
Yes. Yeah.
picking what should be going to the Baker's
Yeah.
line right now, and they're just based on what he's historically done, I guess. Yeah. Cool. That's really neat. That's a neat legacy to have, honestly. That's
And those stories and those histories can go on for a very long time, and they can get passed from one distillery to another distillery, which this is an example. The key on the front of it represents that person that we were talking about having keys to have the access to pick through barrels and find the things that they like and share them with their friends. This is another example. We've had the old Fitzgerald 10-year Bottled-in-Bond here on the show. This is going back to John Fitzgerald, which goes back to the old Stitzel-Weller distillery. The keys are also on Blade and Bow.
Blade and Bow, yeah.
Where they actually, when they closed and shuttered the distillery, the set of keys were hanging on the front door, and there were 7 keys to the distillery. So all of these stories are part and parcel, but this was shuttered, closed, bought and sold, and now this is a Heaven Hill
Heaven
brand.
Hill brand. And this is a wheated bourbon. So we've been drinking corn, rye, malted barley bourbons. This is going to replace rye with wheat.
Okay.
And this is actually one that has a little bit higher percentage of wheat. This is like 20% wheat, 68% corn. The rest
Okay.
of that math is malted barley.
And this one is listed as barrel proof, and this one has a batch number, so there is a number of barrels going into this batch. There is a proof of 125.4, so 62.75 alcohol by volume, and then there's a little story on the back as well telling you about the story of having access to those warehouses.
Why is it called larceny? Did they steal it?
So you had, nowadays every distillery's rick houses are bonded rick houses. In the olden, I won't call them olden days, in the past, you sort of paid for that designation, and you had someone like assigned to that had the key to that
Right.
rick house. And yes, they would use their key and go in there and sample and and start to find, like, hey, the barrels that come from that back corner over there are always, don't sell those, I'll save those for me, or I'll siphon a
And
little
we're
of
talking
those
about
off.
the guy who's
with the key,
who's bonding,
yeah.
who's certifying and bonding this. So this is a government employee
Yeah.
going
Sure.
in there and sneaking some whiskey.
And there have been cases where while they're producing, they lock the box where they're actually producing the spirit so the taxman
Yeah.
can levy taxes. Something called a spirit safe, where only the taxman has the key to the spirit safe. And so, again, a lot of this stuff, the larceny behind it, is trying to trick the taxman. You know, NASCAR was developed because of moonshine.
Yeah,
To,
moonshine
transport
runners. Yeah,
whiskey,
rum
yeah.
runners. Yeah. But okay, but that's called tax fraud. That's different
Yeah.
than larceny.
Yeah.
That's a different line. But I do think that naming your whiskey after crimes
Yeah.
is a strong, like, good male coding for whiskey. I'm trying to think, like, what are some other good ones? Arson. You can have like
Yeah.
a smoky whiskey
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
arson. Homicide. You know.
We'll have to get the
Use the
Savage-
bloody butcher corn in that
Use
one.
the bloody butcher corn. Yeah, exactly.
We should get the Savage and Cook people in here one of these days, because they're actually doing the what's the name of the wine that they do with Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg and yeah, they're also making whiskey in those wine barrels.
Oh, okay.
Those whiskeys ended up having like black bottles. They're actually, I'm seeing new labeling and new processes with that. But yeah, the idea was the black bottle, the husband who was making the whiskey or drinking the whiskey was hiding the fact that you can't see how far the bottle has been going down with the black bottles.
I like the Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. They both did time.
Yeah.
They both
Yeah,
did time.
I love them as a combination.
too.
I just absolutely
Me
love
too.
them.
I think it is adorable and very wholesome. Martha
This
Stewart's cool.
Now, weeded
honestly.
bourbons. This is our first weeded bourbon.
Yeah,
of the
and
night.
this one is a bright and ethanol on the front
And they're
front
always-
nose.
Weeded for me is not so much of a flavor profile. It's more about a mouthfeel. They always feel very creamy, almost. Now, I think weededs can become the oak can overpower that wheat.
Yeah.
So you have some famous 20-year-old weededs that I really don't like. They're like tasting, like licking the inside of a barrel.
Right. Yeah, for me, I've with wheated whiskeys and especially the Buffalo Trace, the Weller side of it, I always find that there's something missing in the middle, and that the hype doesn't live up to the expectation.
Sure.
There's the glove.
Hey.
Now this
Earning
this
it.
is
It's 125
barrel-
proof.
it's called barrel proof. Now generally barrel proof will mean the proof that barrel is when you dump it, but that's talking about one single barrel. This is obviously a blend of a batch of barrels, so I have a feeling this is the average proof of all those barrels
right.
together.
And sometimes they say barrel proof is them.
What they fill what the proof is when they fill the barrel,
Oh.
that is a lot of times called full proof. 1792 and Weller both have full proof, and those are 125. Well, actually, Weller's not, because it's weeded. It goes in a little bit different proof. But the 1792 goes in at 125, so they bottle that full proof at 125. So it could have come out of the barrel a little higher, but they brought it down to
that's
125.
Got it. So it goes into the barrel at 1 proof. Some water evaporates. The proof
It
goes
could go
up.
yeah.
And then you dilute it back to the proof that it was barrel.
Yeah.
Interesting move.
Yeah.
Or you can use different barrels that have different proofs to
And
try and
even it
finagle
out.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, Angel's Envy, they just came out with their Bottled-in-Bond. Bottled-in-Bond is 100 proof, but there's also turned out to be, and I'm sure it was manipulated, so that they could say cask strength
Right.
and Bottled-in-Bond. So they manipulated it so when they dumped those barrels, they were 100
And
proof.
that's
So,
that's
okay.
similar to the élevage that we were talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
adding water as it's proofing and aging. If you can hit that proof point at 100 by bringing enough barrels together and doing that proofing inside of the barrel, you can hit that 100.
So what's the difference between barrel
Proof.
barrel proof
proof.
and cask strength?
Interchangeable. And
Yeah.
Love the ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
A cask strength, again, is generally going to be used when you're talking about bottles from a single barrel.
Right. Certain terms can be fungible, and the way
Yeah, like none of these terms we're all talking about have like no specific,
No legal standing.
Yeah,
Got it. Tea's like that. I always
Yeah.
say that tea
It's
culture.
supposed to mean this, but it could
Right,
mean
right.
it could mean something else.
Right, people always like there's this type. There's teas that are called gushu teas, ancient tree teas, meaning the tree is old. The tea tree that it comes from is an old. Something can be like 1,000 years old. They say nobody really knows. And so like, people are like, well, at what age does it become gushu? It's like, well, there is no real metric. You know,
Which
people say,
the-
oh,
the
100
tree's
years,
old, yeah.
50 years, 200 years. How do you even know how old the tree is? You don't.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of a guess. So
So same thing. I saw a label recently that it says Kentucky bourbon on the front of the label, and then if you look on the back, it's not to name anybody. Let's say it's Richard's Kentucky Bottling Company is written on the back. So it's distilled in Kentucky and bottled by Richard's production company.
That means
Richard's
Richard's not
Kentucky.
making it. Richard
Yeah.
is buying that bourbon
From
from
somebody
somewhere
else.
in Kentucky.
Right.
But my company's based in Kentucky, or my name of Kentucky is in the name of my company. So that's somebody who is a spirits. Basically, they're a non-distillery producer.
But they're putting it in a barrel.
Yeah, but they get to use the Kentucky word
They're
over
buying
and
the
over and
barrels.
over again.
They're buying
And
the barrels.
bottling
Yeah.
it.
So it's just white labeling it.
Yeah.
More or less. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just white labeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a worthwhile distinction because they're not actually contributing anything to the nature, meaningful
Right.
to the nature.
Now
of the
some
spirit.
of them are. There are some that just buy those barrels, put it into a bottle, slap a label on it, and say, "This is mine."
Right.
There are some that buy those barrels, bring them to whatever state they live in, let those barrels age in that state for a certain amount of years, and then they might do something else to it. So there are, and those are the ones I think I appreciate more.
Right.
Because I get not wanting to front millions of dollars and open your own distillery, but you still want to contribute to
Is that
this
what it takes?
industry.
Millions of dollars to open a distillery.
Millions.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean,
If I
guess
said
barrels
5
and
million, that would mean you would need 10 million.
shit. For real?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I guess you need the barrels. Those got to be expensive.
Yeah.
You need
licenses,
the
equipment,
licenses,
Yeah.
stills, rick house. Wow. Million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now
Million.
multiple rick houses with multiple generations of doing this. If you go back to all of the ones that are in on the border to Canada, the Wisers and
Right.
all of those companies that have been making spirits since pre-prohibition, making it through prohibition, they've been putting down barrels for 100+ years. And so all of that is inventory.
Worth millions of dollars at
exactly.
that point.
The same thing, MGP in Indiana, which if you're a distiller in Indiana, it's tough market because MGP in Indiana is such a big producer that in the whiskey community, when you see distilled in Indiana, for some people, it's a code for okay, it's this large producer and they're sourcing from this other place. So if you're actually distilling like Spirits of French Lick, it's going to say distilled in Indiana.
We had those.
Yeah.
We had that
Yes,
one.
we did.
Yeah, we had that one.
Yeah.
Larry Bird's from French Lick.
Yes.
Yes.
I just love Alan. I hope y'all talked about Alan because he is a corn master.
Yeah.
Yes, he brought back some
corns.
heirloom corn that was thought to be extinct,
Hell yeah.
but found
Amazing.
kernels and brought it back.
Hats off
So,
to that guy. Again, always here for the heirloom agricultural, Wow. So, man, that is...
And I like how this tea
Millions of dollars.
stands up to both of these.
Yeah.
Like especially Baker's and Larceny being so completely different. But yeah.
Yeah,
it's
aged white
complicated.
tea, like I said, aged white tea, if I've got a group of people and I don't know what to serve everybody because I don't know what people like, I'll serve aged white tea because it just always, it stands up to strong flavors. It's sweet, it's rich, it's not subtle, it's bold, but it's not overpowering. It's got no bitterness, it's just got sweetness. And and it's got this very like holding, nurturing, energy, this very kind of maternal chi to it. And that's what we talk about in tea culture. We talk about the chi of the tea, how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
And that's like the main event, really.
That's because I talk about feelings a lot when I do my tastings. I don't ever want to come off as some pretentious, like I'm up here teaching all about whiskey. I know more
Right.
than you. I can taste better than you. So I always I don't like to stand in front of my people. I want to sit down with them at the table and participate in the tasting with them and kind of take myself through it as they're going through it. It reminds me of like when I was doing my yoga teacher training, they made us go take like a beginner's series of yoga. This, taking you back, you have to remember what it's like to be a beginner and learning.
Right.
So that you can talk to them on that level. I forgot where I was going with that, but
It's the third episode, of the night.
go.
You get there. I was gonna say I did not realize it was so expensive to start a distillery. These dudes who were doing it back in like the 1920s or 1930s or whatever, or like before, they're taking advantage of a different economy.
Yeah.
But like, so now that really changes that story about young Master Licorice deciding that he didn't want to be a lawyer. It's like, well, I guess they're not too mad
spent
about
all
it.
this money on law school, but yeah,
If he can casually open a distillery and follow his dream, then they're not too mad about him not
No,
going and being a lawyer.
Yeah, this past weekend I actually met an owner distiller from Houston, and he is selling his bottles one at a time. And to him, it's like, I made this, you want this. And there is a terrible personal connection, and you can tell when people are making these things. It's like it's an investment in their family, it's an investment in themselves, it's an investment in the liquid. There's multiple years put into this to finally get somewhere, or to get some traction, or to find some appreciation. It's an endeavor of passion and love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and finding fans and people that want to talk about what you're doing and who you are and where you're going. This is the story of the tea
Yeah.
that we're doing. This is the story of the spirits that we're exploring. And like I said before, and I'll say it a million times, every time I see a bottle, I see people.
Yeah.
I see the story of people and families and people who are going through good times and bad times and trying to connect and get along. And I am so happy that Shannon was here and able to visit us
Yes.
on her.
I remembered where I was going with that. It was feelings.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I will tell people, they're like, I don't know how to say like this tastes like this or this. And so I'll be like, how does it make you feel? This makes me feel warm and fuzzy. This makes me
Yeah.
feel happy because it reminds me of those maple nut goodie candies that I used to eat with my dad on Sundays. It's or sometimes it's color words that will. So this tastes green, and it's not like
Yeah.
rye green or minty green. There's just something green
Right.
about it.
Right. Absolutely. Same with tea. And like I said, we got a word for it. It's called the cha chi. Cha means tea. Chi means the breath of the tea, the chi of the tea, just like prana in yoga. It's the same thing, breath, but it more than breath. And that's what I always do with people too, because people also want to get up in their head. I think that the flavor wheel, tasting notes, that's the frontal lobe that's up in your head. And that's this kind of very like masculine, intellectualizing like way of going about
If I'm
it.
going to look smart, I got to be able to say all these words.
Exactly,
Or
exactly.
people are not going to take me
But
seriously.
what hits you in your body isn't that. It actually is, you might not be able to say why I love, I always think about what's the whiskey or the tea that maybe I couldn't describe it when I was drinking it, but the next day I'm thinking about it and I want to drink it again. And I'm like, man, I want some more of that. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you what it is I like about it. It makes me feel good. My body wants it again.
Yeah.
My body desires it. And I don't necessarily have a way of articulating that or intellectualizing that. But that's what they call the chi, cha chi, the chi of the tea. And it absolutely is at the heart of what makes one whiskey different from another, why you can have two whiskeys with the same ABV giving you a completely different experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, it has a lot to do with people and places, and that cements the memory. If I've got a spirit and I've got an occasion, and I can get that occasion tied to those people around a table, like what we're doing here, it makes more of an impact. And when I recall those memories, it has more to do about people and place and occasion than it did with anything else.
Yeah, then a specific flavor note. Yeah, it's more about that
Right. Yeah, and I think
whole feeling.
I think a lot of the gatekeeping that you'll see in these kind of connoisseurship cultures is when people get to this stumbling block. It's like, well, I don't know what to say about this. Like, I feel like I'm at a loss. I feel like I'm not doing it right because I don't have the words for this. And I think that being able to move people past that and get to like, what's in your heart? Like, what is it doing to your heart? That's what you're really, and maybe you can't express that in any way, but it doesn't matter because you're having the experience.
And the grandmother stories and the time when you were young and the family, and those are all ways of connecting to that. And sometimes it's ephemeral, trying to grab onto that memory and put it together with a place and time. It actually makes, again, for a stronger connection when we come back to it, and you get that aha. That's where that was, and that's who those people were. And I remember Shannon and Emma and Eric over at the Psalm class. I remember the ceremony. I remember there's 36 whiskeys you have to go through in the next couple of days. And you need to guide a number of brand new novice people through those 36 whiskeys. They're going to create a new community.
Wow.
And they're going to become bonded in that. And then at the end of the ceremony, the other Psalms who have graduated before them will be there to congratulate them and welcome them into this fellowship. It's a fellowship of whiskey enthusiasts, and that's the community that we're a part of. And we're glad that you're a part of this too. In the whiskey and the tea has been such an exploration, and I appreciate you every single time, Sohan, and I appreciate Shannon for
Thank you
coming
so much.
here.
I appreciate it. This has been so fun. I love seeing all the similarities, like just between tea and whiskey.
So if someone wanted to get in touch with like all the stuff that you do so many different things.
Yeah.
Let's say someone wanted to take your classes and they wanted to be able to experience what you're offering. Is there like a particular place that they can go to get all that info? Or
You can find me on social media at Poorly Educated.
Poorly, P-O-U-R-L-Y.
P-O-U-R-L-Y. Educated. Yes.
Yeah, love the puns. Yeah. As a dad, I appreciate a good pun.
And as always, Whiskey Provisioner and West China Tea.
West China Tea and Sugar Plum, 2015 Sugar Plum.
Delicious.
We'll put it in the link.
This
Cheers.
will be an easy tea leaf to read. There's only one.
What's it say?
I don't know.
Cheers, y'all. Thanks for coming.
Cheers.